A single drop of water is all it took to end her career. Elena Sanchez, a waitress drowning in $100,000 of student debt, accidentally spilled one drop on the table of billionaire Julian Thorne. She watched in horror as her manager, Mark Peterson, groveled. But as she cleaned the table, Thorne leaned over to his associate and began speaking in rapid, harsh Arabic. He insulted her, called her an empty-headed child, and mocked her. He assumed the help was invisible. He assumed she was ignorant. What he didn't know was that Elena's $100,000 in debt came from a master's degree in Arabic linguistics. She stood up, looked him dead in the eye, and the words that came out of her mouth next didn't just stop his heart. They changed her entire world. The service light on the kitchen computer chimed, a sound that had become the soundtrack to Elena Sanchez's waking nightmare. It was 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the Meridian, a restaurant so exclusive it didn't have a sign, was buzzing. The air smelled of seared scallops and old money. Elena, 26, balanced 3 plates on her left arm, the ceramic pressing into a bruise she'd gotten last night. Each plate cost more than her first car. She was, by any academic measure, a genius. She held a master's degree in modern linguistics and Middle Eastern studies from a prestigious university. She could argue geopolitical theory in 3 languages and translate 13th century poetry from 2 more. She was also $103,450 in debt. This crushing weight was why she was here, at the Meridian in downtown Chicago, wearing a starched black apron and smiling at people who viewed her as furniture. Sanchez, Table 4 needs their check. Table 7 is asking for you, and the Thorne party is here. Do not mess this up. The voice belonged to Mark Peterson, the restaurant's general manager. Peterson was a man who lived in a state of perpetually clenched terror. He managed by fear, worshipping the wealthy clients and terrorizing the staff who served them. The Thorne party? Elena asked, her blood running a little cold. Julian Thorne, as in Thorne Global, as in the man who could buy this entire city block before his appetizer gets cold. He's in the private dining room, and he's particular. Peterson straightened his already perfect tie, his eyes darting to the private room's closed door. Everything is yes, Mr. Thorne. Right away, Mr. Thorne. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't exist. Got it? Got it, Mr. Peterson, Elena said, her voice a flat, professional monotone. Don't look him in the eye, Peterson added, as a final, useless instruction, before bustling away. Elena took a deep breath, smoothing her apron. Her friend and fellow waitress, Sarah Jensen, slid up next to her at the service bar, grabbing a tray of drinks. You got Thorne. Good luck, Sarah whispered, her eyes wide. Last time he was here, he had his server fired because his steak was too loud when he cut it. I'm not kidding. Peterson canned him on the spot. Too loud? Elena muttered. What does that even mean? It means he's an entitled monster, Sarah said, hoisting her tray. Just be a ghost, Elena. Be a ghost and get through it. Elena nodded, but a familiar, bitter heat rose in her chest. She had spent 5 years of her life becoming an expert. Her dissertation on the evolution of Gulf dialects had been called groundbreaking by her professors. Now, her primary professional goal was to become a ghost for a man who thought a steak could be too loud. She grabbed a heavy silver pitcher of ice water, the condensation cold against her fingers, and pushed open the heavy oak door to the private dining room. The room was quiet. 2 men sat at a table covered in documents. One was older, with a kind, tired face. This was Mr. Cole, Thorne's COO. The other, facing the door, was Julian Thorne. He wasn't what she expected. He was young, maybe mid-30s, with sharp, severe features and eyes so dark and intense they seemed to absorb the light in the room. He was wearing a dark, impeccably tailored suit, but he wore it like armor. He was radiating an aura of such profound impatience that Elena felt it like a physical force. "Water, sir?" she asked, her voice quiet. Thorne didn't even look up. He just waved a dismissive hand, deep in conversation with Cole. Elena moved with practiced, silent grace. She approached Mr. Cole first, filling his glass. Then she moved to Julian Thorne. She held the heavy pitcher, tilting it slowly. The water streamed into the crystal glass. And then it happened. A piece of ice, clinging to the inside of the pitcher, dislodged and fell into the glass with a tiny clink. The smallest, most insignificant splash escaped the rim. It wasn't a spill. It was a micro-droplet, a single tiny drop of water that landed on the dark wood of the table, inches from a stack of financial reports. Elena froze. Julian Thorne stopped talking. The silence was absolute. He slowly, deliberately, turned his head. His dark eyes didn't look at her. They looked at the single drop of water. He stared at it for 1 second. 2. Then he lifted his gaze to her. It was not anger. It was a cold, pure, dismissive contempt that was far worse. "Mr. Peterson!" he boomed, his voice cutting through the heavy door. Elena felt her stomach turn to ice. She hadn't even spilled it on him. It was a single drop. On the table. The door flew open, and Peterson scurried in, his face pale with panic. "Mr. Thorne, is everything all right? My apologies." "This server," Thorne said, his voice dripping with disdain as he gestured to Elena, "is incompetent. I'm in the middle of a $1 billion negotiation, and I have to be interrupted by this." "Sir, I am so sorry," Elena began, her voice shaking slightly. "It was just one—" "Quiet!" Peterson hissed at her, his eyes wide with fear. He pulled a pristine white handkerchief from his breast pocket and personally dabbed the single, offending drop of water as if it were toxic waste. "I apologize, Mr. Thorne, profusely. It will not happen again. I will remove her from your service immediately." Thorne leaned back in his chair, his eyes still locked on Elena. He looked at her, really looked at her, with her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and her face pale with humiliation. He then turned to Mr. Cole. The billionaire let out a short, huffing laugh of disbelief, and then he began to speak in a language he was certain no one in this room but his associate would understand. He spoke in rapid, fluent, Gulf-style Arabic. "This is what's wrong with this country," he said, his voice laced with venom. "They let children do a professional's job. This place is a joke. Look at her. She's probably as empty-headed as she is clumsy. She can't even pour water. I'd be surprised if she can even read." He smirked at Mr. Cole, expecting a commiserating laugh. Cole, to his credit, just looked uncomfortable. Thorne glanced back at Elena, who was standing frozen, her hands at her side. He added one final dismissive insult in Arabic. "Just get her out of my sight." Peterson, hearing the foreign language, just smiled nervously, assuming it was part of their business. "Right away, sir. Sanchez, you're done here. Go to my office. Now." He turned to leave, but Elena didn't move. Something inside Elena Sanchez snapped. It wasn't just the insult. It was the years of frustration. It was the crushing debt. It was the bitter irony of being called empty-headed in the very language she had dedicated her life to mastering. She had spent sleepless nights in a library, writing a 200-page thesis on the precise dialect he was now using to mock her. Peterson had his back to her, expecting her to follow. Mr. Cole was looking down at his papers, embarrassed. Julian Thorne was already turning back to his documents, having dismissed her from his reality. Elena took one, steadying breath. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. She did not speak to Peterson. She spoke directly to Julian Thorne. She said, in perfect, unaccented, academic-grade Arabic, "Sir, your assumption is incorrect." The entire room stopped. Peterson froze, his hand on the doorknob. Mr. Cole's head snapped up, his jaw slack. Julian Thorne's hand, which was reaching for his pen, stopped dead. He didn't turn around. He just froze, his entire body rigid. Elena continued, her voice not loud, but carrying the precise, cutting authority of a professor addressing a disruptive student. "I am not empty-headed," she continued in flawless Arabic, "and I can, in fact, read. I can read the financial reports on your table. I can read the poetry of Al-Mutanabbi, and I can most certainly read your character, which you've just laid bare for everyone to see." Julian Thorne turned his head. He moved slowly, as if in a dream, his face utterly drained of colour. The arrogance, the impatience, the sheer power, it all evaporated, replaced by a look of profound, unadulterated shock. He stared at her, as if she had just grown a second head. Peterson, hearing this stream of what was, to him, gibberish, spun around. "Sanchez! What in God's name do you think you're doing? I told you to get out." Elena ignored him. She held Julian Thorne's gaze. "Furthermore," she said, switching to the same Gulf dialect he had used, her accent flawless, "my competence is not defined by a single drop of water, just as a man's character should not be defined by the money in his bank. But you, sir, are making that a very difficult argument to support." Mr. Cole let out a small, strangled cough. Julian Thorne simply stared. He was speechless. This waitress, this nothing, had not only understood his private insult, but she had replied. She had corrected him. She had lectured him, and she had done it in a dialect that his own multi-million-dollar tutors struggled to perfect. "What is going on?" Peterson shrieked, his face turning a blotchy red. Are you threatening this customer, Sanchez?" Elena finally broke her gaze from Thorne and looked at her manager. She switched back to English, her voice calm and clear. "Mr. Peterson, this gentleman insulted me. He called me an empty-headed child and said I was clumsy and couldn't read. He did so in Arabic, assuming I was too stupid to understand him." Peterson looked frantically between Elena and Thorne. "Mr. Thorne, I'm sure she's mistaken. She's hysterical." "She is not mistaken." The voice was Julian Thorne's. It was quiet, strained. He was still pale. He looked at Elena, and for the first time, he wasn't looking at her. He was seeing her. The disbelieving shock was slowly being replaced by something else, a dawning, terrifying calculation. "She understood every word," Thorne said in English, his voice flat. Peterson's entire world seemed to crumble. He looked at Elena with a new, horrified expression. You speak that?" "I have a master's degree in it," Elena said simply. You're fired," Peterson finally sputtered, pointing a shaking finger at the door. "You are fired! How dare you! Insubordination! Eavesdropping! Get out! Get out of this restaurant! Clear out your locker!" Elena looked at Peterson. Then she looked at Thorne. Thorne was just watching her, his expression now completely unreadable. He didn't defend her. He didn't stop the manager. He just watched. A bitter laugh almost escaped Elena's lips. Of course. What did she expect? That he would suddenly defend her? He was a billionaire, and she was the help who had embarrassed him. "Fine," Elena said. She untied the black apron, the one that represented all her debt and failure. She folded it neatly and placed it on the service tray. "I'll send you a forwarding address for my last paycheck," she said to Peterson. She then looked directly at Julian Thorne. "Have a lovely evening, Mr. Thorne," she said, in perfect English. Then she leaned in just slightly and whispered in Arabic, so only he and Cole could hear, "And good luck on your deal. You're going to need it." She turned and walked out of the room. She didn't slam the door. She closed it gently behind her, leaving Julian Thorne and his associate in the wreckage of the silence she had created. Elena walked out of the Meridian into the cold Chicago night. The reality of her situation hit her with the force of the wind coming off the lake. She was fired. She was unemployed. Her rent was due in a week, and her student loan payment, a staggering $800, was due in 2. She had $412 in her bank account. Her moment of defiance, which had felt so righteous and powerful in the dining room, now just felt stupid, reckless. What had she accomplished? She had talked back to a billionaire, and now she couldn't pay her rent. She had let her pride ruin her. She went home to her tiny, garden-level apartment, the kind where you could see people's feet walking by the window. She sat on her second-hand sofa and did what she hadn't done in years. She cried. She cried for the sheer, crushing unfairness of it all. All that work, all that study, all for nothing. The next day was a blur of grey misery. She woke up, her eyes puffy, and immediately logged onto her laptop. She spent 8 straight hours applying for jobs. She applied to be an executive assistant, a receptionist, a barista, a dog walker. She even applied to another high-end restaurant, knowing she'd have to lie about why she left the Meridian. She also sent her resume to 3 translation services, but they all wanted 5-10 years of in-field experience. Her academic qualifications, it seemed, were worthless in the real world. By 3 p.m., she had received 6 automated rejection emails. Her phone, which had been silent all day, suddenly buzzed. It was an unknown number. She ignored it. It buzzed again. A voicemail. She listened, pressing the phone to her ear. "A message for Ms. Elena Sanchez," said a crisp, professional woman's voice. "My name is Amanda Bishop, executive assistant to Mr. Julian Thorne. Mr. Thorne requests a meeting with you this afternoon at his offices. A car is being sent to your address and will arrive in 15 minutes to bring you downtown. Please be ready." The message ended. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. A car? A meeting? Was he going to sue her? Blacklist her from every restaurant in the city? She was terrified. But what choice did she have? If she ignored him, he could still do all those things. At least this way, she could face him. She splashed cold water on her face, changed out of her sweatpants into her one interview outfit, a simple black blouse and slacks, and ran a brush through her hair. She felt like a prisoner being called to her own sentencing. Exactly 15 minutes later, a gleaming black Mercedes S-Class sedan glided to a stop in front of her apartment building. The driver, a man in a black suit, got out and opened the rear door for her, not saying a word. Elena slid into the plush leather interior. The car was silent, insulated from the world. It pulled away from the curb, leaving her old, failed life behind. She had no idea she was being driven toward a new one. The drive was short. They pulled into a private garage beneath a towering glass skyscraper, Thorne Global Headquarters. The driver led her to a private elevator. He used a key card, and the elevator shot upwards, not stopping, until it chimed softly, and the doors opened directly into a penthouse office. The office was vast. 3 of its walls were floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a staggering 180-degree view of Chicago and Lake Michigan. The furniture was minimal, expensive, and severe. And at a massive black desk, staring out the window, stood Julian Thorne. He was in his shirt sleeves, his suit jacket gone. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Ms. Bishop, you can go." Hold all my calls, he said, not turning. The assistant who had called Elena, a woman as sharp and severe as the office, nodded once and vanished through a side door. The elevator doors slid shut behind Elena, leaving her alone with him. The silence was deafening. He finally turned to face her. His expression was not angry. It was calculating, intense. He looked at her the way he had in the restaurant, but the contempt was gone, replaced by a raw, unsettling curiosity. You have a master's in linguistics, he stated. It wasn't a question. Yes, Elena said, her voice small but steady. From where? Georgetown, he nodded slowly. My alma mater. My father sits on the board. Elena's heart sank. Of course, this was the old boy network. He was going to have her degree revoked. He never mentioned the linguistics department, Thorne continued, walking slowly toward her. He considered it a soft science, a waste of tuition. He stopped a few feet from her. Last night you spoke in a Gulf dialect. Your accent was flawless. Better than my own. I pay my tutors $500 an hour, and they don't sound as good as you. I spent a year in Riyadh for my thesis, Elena said, finding her footing. I lived it. You lived in Riyadh, and you were serving me scallops, he said, more to himself than to her. He seemed genuinely baffled by the disconnect. Student loans, Mr. Thorne. They don't pay themselves. He stared at her for a long moment. Last night, I was an arrogant fool. What I said was inexcusable. It was the result of a very high-stress negotiation, but that is no excuse. I am sorry. The apology hung in the air, feeling as strange and foreign in that room as her Arabic had in the restaurant. Thank you, Elena said quietly. But I didn't bring you here to apologize, he said, his tone shifting back to business. I brought you here because I have a problem. He gestured to his desk, where the same documents from the restaurant were spread out. This is a $2 billion deal, he said. A green energy infrastructure project. My partners are a consortium based in Riyadh. The same consortium, I'm sure, whose dialect you just perfected. He paused, his eyes narrowing. The deal is falling apart. We're arguing over contractual nuances. My lead translator, a man I've used for years, quit 2 days ago, poached by a competitor. I've been using a translation service, and it's a disaster. We're talking past each other. Things are getting hostile. He locked his eyes on hers. My associate, Mr. Cole, was impressed. I was more than impressed. You didn't just understand what I said. You understood the subtext, the insult, the nuance. He walked back to his desk and picked up a single sheet of paper. I called the Meridian this morning, he said. I spoke to Mr. Peterson. Elena braced herself. I informed him that his behavior was appalling, that you were the most professional person in that room, and that if he ever wanted a single member of my board, my company, or anyone I've ever spoken to set foot in his establishment again, he would issue you a formal apology and offer you your job back, with a promotion to manager. Elena blinked. He did? He agreed, of course, Thorne said dismissively. You can have your old job back, Miss Sanchez. You can go back to pouring water for men like me. He slid the piece of paper across the desk. It was a check. Or, he said, you can accept this. It's a signing bonus for $1 million, and you can come and save my $2 billion deal. Elena stared at the check. It was a cashier's check, made out to Elena Sanchez. The number was 1,000 Borsacks. She had never seen so many zeros. Her mind reeled. It was a joke. It had to be. $1 million? She stammered. That's your signing bonus, Thorne said impatiently, as if this were a normal Tuesday. Your salary for the project will be triple that, The project is estimated to last 3 months. If we fail, you keep the bonus. If we succeed, you get a significant completion fee." He mistook her stunned silence for negotiation. "Look, Ms. Sanchez, I am in a bad position. My competitors know my translator quit. They are actively trying to sabotage this deal. The consortium I'm meeting with, they are very traditional. They value respect. They value nuance. Last night, you proved you are a master of it. I'm not hiring you to translate words. I'm hiring you to translate intent." Elena found her voice. It was shaking. You insulted me. You got me fired. And now you're offering me $1 million. "I didn't get you fired," he corrected her, his voice sharp. "Your incompetent manager fired you, and I rectified that. But yes, the irony is not lost on me. I am offering you a fortune to fix a problem I am having with the very language I use to demean you. The universe, it seems, has a twisted sense of humor." Elena looked from the check to his face. He was not joking. He was desperate, and he was smart. He knew, from her 30-second reply, exactly what she was capable of. He wasn't hiring a waitress. He was hiring a weapon. "What are the terms?" she asked, her voice suddenly businesslike. The shock was fading, replaced by the same cold clarity she'd felt in the restaurant. Thorne almost smiled. "The terms are simple. You are on retainer 24/7. You will be my personal advisor and sole translator for this negotiation. You will fly with me to Riyadh tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" "The negotiations are in person. You'll have an office here, an expense account, a new wardrobe. Ms. Bishop will handle everything. All you have to do is what you did last night. Listen to what they're really saying." Elena thought of her $100,450 in debt. This check would erase it. This check would change her family's life. This check was her get-out-of-jail-free card for the life she was trapped in. But it was more than that. It was validation. It was the chance to use her skills, the chance to be in the room where it happens, not serving the water. "I have one condition," Elena said. Thorne raised an eyebrow. "I am not your assistant. I am not your servant. I am your linguistic and cultural advisor. You will treat me as a professional. When I am in that room, my word on language and culture is final. If I tell you not to say something, you don't say it. If I tell you that you've misunderstood, you listen. I am not an employee. I am a consultant. Is that clear?" The shadow of a genuine smile touched Julian Thorne's lips. "Ms. Sanchez, for $4 million, you can call yourself whatever you want. As long as you save this deal. Is that clear?" "Crystal," Elena said. "Good. Welcome to Thorne Global." He pointed to the check. "Deposit that on your way to see Ms. Bishop. She's waiting for you. A car will take you to get a passport expedited, and then to a tailor. We fly at 6 a.m. The next 24 hours were a surreal blur. Elena was whisked from the bank, where the teller's hands shook as they processed the deposit, to a high-end salon, to a private tailor who measured her for a dozen bespoke suits and business dresses, all in muted, powerful colors. She was given a new laptop, a new phone, and a portfolio of the deal's sticking points. She didn't sleep. She spent the entire night in her new, temporary corporate apartment, which was larger than her entire old building, poring over the documents. She read the mistranslated emails, the faulty contracts. She instantly saw the problem. The translation service Thorne had used was using formal, classical Arabic, but the consortium's internal memos, which had been poorly translated, were peppered with a specific, regional Najdi dialect. The translators were missing the colloquialisms. They were translating, "We must wait for the wind to settle," as a poetic musing. Elena knew it was a common business idiom meaning, We are waiting for the regulatory committee to give the unofficial go-ahead. Thorne's team had been replying to idiomatic expressions with sterile, legalistic English. They weren't just talking past each other. They were insulting each other. Thorne's side seemed blunt and untrusting, and the Saudi side seemed flaky and non-committal. She was walking into a minefield. At 5 a.m. she met Julian Thorne and Mr. Cole at a private airfield. Thorne was back in his suit armor, his face grim. He nodded at her. "Miss Sanchez, you look different." "So do you, Mr. Thorne," she said. She was wearing a dark navy suit, her hair in a sleek professional chignon. The waitress was gone. They boarded the Gulfstream G650. As the jet climbed over the dark Chicago skyline, Elena opened her laptop. "We need to talk," she said. "We are not going to win this by arguing the contract points." Thorne and Cole looked at her. "We are going to win this," she said, "by offering an apology." "An apology?" Thorne balked. "For what? Their indecision?" "An apology," Elena said, her voice firm. "For our arrogance. We've been translating their courtesy as weakness and our directness as strength. It's the other way around. We've been shouting at them in a language they understand all too well. We are going to start this meeting by me apologizing, on your behalf, for the cultural ignorance of our previous translators. We are going to show humility. And then, we are going to fix this." Julian Thorne stared at her, the woman who had served him water 48 hours ago. He was about to argue, but he saw the look in her eyes. It was the same look she'd had in the restaurant, a look of absolute, unshakable certainty. He nodded. "Do it." The boardroom in Riyadh was an exercise in opulent power, a single polished slab of mahogany stretching 30 feet, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over a cityscape of sand and glass. On one side sat Julian Thorne, Mr. Cole, and Elena Sanchez. On the other sat Sheikh Al-Jamil, the patriarch of the consortium, and his 3 sons, along with their own legal team. And at the end of the table sat a man introduced as Mr. Ibrahim, their lead translator. Elena recognized him, or rather, she recognized his name. She had read a paper he'd published. He was brilliant, but known for being ruthless. The mood was ice cold. The sheikh, a formidable man in immaculate white robes, had not smiled. The meeting began in English. "Mr. Thorne," the sheikh said, his voice a deep rumble, "we are displeased. Your contracts are aggressive. Your timelines are disrespectful. We feel you do not understand the way we do business." Thorne tensed, about to retort. Elena placed a hand gently on the portfolio in front of him, the prearranged "stop" signal. She leaned forward and addressed the sheikh. She began in perfect formal Arabic. "Your Excellency, Sheikh Al-Jamil. May I be permitted to speak?" The sheikh and his sons registered a flicker of surprise. Their own translator, Ibrahim, narrowed his eyes. "You may," the sheikh said, curious. "My name is Elena Sanchez," she said. "I am Mr. Thorne's senior cultural and linguistic advisor. I have only just been brought on to this project, and I must begin, on behalf of Thorne Global, with an apology." The temperature in the room changed. The tension didn't disappear, but it shifted. "We have been reviewing the correspondence," Elena continued in Arabic, "and it is clear to us that our previous representation did not afford you the respect you are due. They mistook your careful, deliberate planning for hesitation. They failed to understand the nuances of your regional expressions, and in doing so, they replied with a bluntness that I am sure was perceived as arrogance. That was our failure, not yours, and we are here to correct it." The sheikh stared at her. He had not expected this. He looked at Thorne. Mr. Thorne, this woman speaks for you. Thorne, following Elena's script, nodded. She does. On all matters of culture and language, Ms. Sanchez's voice is my voice. The sheikh stroked his beard, then nodded at Elena. Continue. For the next 2 hours, Elena was a master. She was a conductor, a diplomat, and a dictionary all in one. When Thorne's lawyers would say, "We need a firm deadline on the regulatory approval," Elena would translate it as, "Mr. Thorne deeply respects the necessity of the regulatory process and wishes to know how we can best support your timeline to ensure a smooth and swift approval for our mutual benefit." When the sheikh's son would say, in Arabic, "This is impossible. My father will not be pushed," Ibrahim, the other translator, would translate it to the room as, "This is not possible." Elena would politely interject, "If I may, Mr. Ibrahim, I believe the sheikh's son's intent was not just that it is impossible, but that the pacing of the request feels pressured, which is a matter of respect, not capability. Is that correct?" The son would look at her, shocked, and nod. "Yes, exactly." Julian Thorne watched this, mesmerized. She wasn't just translating. She was diffusing bombs. She was reframing the entire negotiation, not as an argument, but as a collaboration. Then came the sticking point, a liability clause. The consortium wanted Thorne Global to assume all risk for regulatory delays. Thorne's lawyers refused. The argument grew heated. Finally, the sheikh held up a hand. He spoke to his sons and his translator, Mr. Ibrahim, in rapid-fire Arabic. They were having a private, heated debate. Elena and the Thorne team sat in silence, waiting. The sheikh was angry. "This is an insult," he said in Arabic. "Why should we trust them?" And then Mr. Ibrahim, the translator, said something quiet and fast to the sheikh. "Your Excellency, perhaps a compromise. We can agree to their clause, but only if they agree to use our preferred local subcontractor for all labor." The sheikh nodded. "Fine. Propose it." Mr. Ibrahim turned to the Thorne team, his face a mask of professional calm. He began to speak in English. "Gentlemen, Miss Sanchez, the sheikh is willing to make a concession. He will agree to your liability clause." Thorne's lawyers looked relieved. "On one small condition. As a show of goodwill, he requests that you prioritize hiring local labor as opportunities allow. A symbolic gesture." Mr. Cole brightened. "That's it? A symbolic gesture? Absolutely. We can put that in a memorandum. It's not even a contractual change." Thorne looked at Elena. She was staring, not at Ibrahim, but at her notepad. Her face was pale. "Ms. Sanchez?" Thorne asked. "Is that acceptable?" Elena took a deep breath. This was it. This was the moment. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice low and steady, "may I have a word with you and Mr. Cole, in private? For 1 minute." The request was a breach of protocol. The Saudi team looked annoyed. Ibrahim looked nervous. "It is urgent," she said. Thorne, honoring his promise, stood up. 5 minutes, gentlemen. Please excuse us." They stepped into the private anteroom. The second the door closed, Thorne grabbed her arm. "What is it? That was great news. We won." "We're being cheated," Elena said, her voice shaking with adrenaline. "That translator, Ibrahim, he's lying." "What?" Cole said. "What do you mean, lying?" "He didn't translate what the sheikh said. He didn't even translate what he said. He's inserting his own agenda." "Explain," Thorne said, his eyes turning to dark ice. Ibrahim proposed a compromise to the sheikh. He didn't say local labor. He said their preferred local subcontractor. Singular. And when he translated it for us, he changed it to local labor, as opportunities allow. He softened it. He's playing both sides. Why? Cole asked. I don't know, Elena said. But a preferred subcontractor isn't a symbolic gesture. It's a multi-million-dollar kickback. He's trying to slip it past us and past them. He's likely getting paid by this subcontractor. He's sabotaging the deal for his own profit. Thorne was silent for a beat. The level of deception was staggering. He had been about to walk right into it. He's betting, Thorne said, that you're just a standard translator, that you wouldn't catch the difference between local labor and a preferred subcontractor. He's betting that you're just like the last ones. What do we do? Cole asked, panicked. We can't accuse him. We'll insult the sheikh and blow the whole deal. Thorne looked at Elena. The trust in his eyes was absolute. What do you do, Ms. Sanchez? This is your room. Elena's mind raced. She couldn't accuse Ibrahim in English. It would be her word against his. She couldn't accuse him in front of the sheikh. It would cause a massive loss of face. She had to expose him, but she had to do it to him and let him hang himself. I have an idea, she said, but you have to follow my lead. Do not react. And Mr. Thorne, I need you to look angry, not at him. At me. Thorne looked confused. I don't understand. You're not supposed to, she said. They're not supposed to. Just trust me. They re-entered the boardroom. The atmosphere was expectant. Mr. Ibrahim, the translator, looked smug. Our apologies, gentlemen, Julian Thorne said, his voice hard as steel. He sat down and didn't look at the sheikh. He glared, as requested, at Elena. Mr. Ibrahim, Thorne said in English, your translation was a symbolic gesture. My advisor. He said the word with a slight sneer. Seems to think this is a more binding request. She is cautious. Elena kept her face down, as if she were being reprimanded. Ibrahim smiled, a thin, oily smile. It is merely a sign of mutual respect, Mr. Thorne, a cultural necessity. Your advisor is perhaps unfamiliar with the scale of such deals. It is nothing for your lawyers to worry about. He was patronizing her. He too saw her as the help who had gotten lucky. I see, Thorne said. So you are confirming. It is a non-binding request for local labor. Precisely, Ibrahim said. Good. Thorne leaned back. Then we have a deal. Mr. Cole looked at Elena in panic. What was she doing? She was letting it happen. The sheikh looked pleased. Excellent. We will have the final contracts drawn up. Everyone began to gather their papers. The deal was done. Elena waited until the sheikh had stood up, until Ibrahim was shaking Mr. Cole's hand, smiling his false smile. Then she spoke. She did not speak in English. She did not speak in the formal Arabic of the meeting. She spoke directly to Mr. Ibrahim in a sharp, cutting Egyptian dialect, a dialect known in the linguistic world as the language of media, confrontation, and a good intellectual fight. Mr. Ibrahim, she said, her voice clear and carrying across the room. Ibrahim froze, his hand still holding Cole's. You are a very skilled man, Elena continued in Arabic, a polite smile on her face. I was just reading your 2019 paper on contractual false friends in Gulf negotiations. It was brilliant, especially your section on the preferred subcontractor gambit. Ibrahim's face went from smug to ashen in a fraction of a second. He looked as if she had physically struck him. The sheikh and his sons, who had been talking among themselves, stopped and turned. They heard the shift in language. They saw the look on Ibrahim's face. What is this? The sheikh asked, his voice sharp. What did she say? I... Ibrahim stammered, pulling his hand back from Cole. I was just telling Mr. Ibrahim how much I admired his academic work, Elena said, switching back to the formal Gulf dialect, her voice full of false innocence. He wrote a fascinating paper on how dishonest translators can attempt to slip kickback clauses into negotiations, specifically by using the term a preferred subcontractor when their client simply meant local labor. It's a classic, deceitful tactic. She held Ibrahim's gaze, her smile unwavering. A lesser translator might have missed it. But you and I, we know the difference, don't we, Mr. Ibrahim? There was a terrible, profound silence in the room. Ibrahim was trapped. He was sweating. The sheikh was not a stupid man. He looked at Ibrahim, and he understood instantly. He had been played. They had been played. "Ibrahim," the sheikh said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. "Is this true? Did you attempt to deceive me? And my guests? Your Excellency, it was a misunderstanding, a linguistic nuance," Ibrahim pleaded, his career evaporating before his eyes. "A nuance?" the sheikh roared, his voice bouncing off the glass. "You lied. You used this tactic in my negotiation." "He did," Elena said quietly, her voice cutting through the sheikh's rage. "He proposed it to you as a compromise, and then he deliberately mistranslated it to us as a symbolic gesture. He was robbing you both." The sheikh's face was purple with rage. He snapped his fingers. Two large security guards who had been standing by the door entered the room. "Get this thief out of my sight," the sheikh commanded. "He is finished in this city. He will be finished in this entire hemisphere." Ibrahim, pale and shaking, was physically escorted from the room. The room was silent again. The deal, which had been done, was now in tatters. The trust was broken. Mr. Cole looked like he was going to be sick. Thorne just stared at the door where Ibrahim had vanished. Elena, her heart hammering, turned to the sheikh. "Your Excellency," she said, bowing her head slightly. We deeply apologize. This was a violation of your trust. Of our trust." The sheikh looked at her, his anger still radiating. You knew. You heard it, and you exposed it." "It was my job to protect my client, sir," Elena said. "And it was my duty to protect the honor of this negotiation." The sheikh stared at her for a long, agonizing moment. Then a slow, deep laugh started in his chest. It was not a happy laugh, but it was not an angry one. It was a laugh of pure, astonished respect. "Mr. Thorne," the sheikh boomed, turning to Julian. This woman, she has the eyes of a hawk and the courage of a lion. Where did you find her?" Thorne, who had been watching Elena with an expression of sheer awe, finally spoke. "She found me, Your Excellency." "Ha!" The sheikh slapped the table. "I see. Well, the snake is gone from our garden. Now let us talk, really talk, with no more lies." He looked at Elena. "And you, Ms. Sanchez, you will sit next to me. I am tired of translators. From now on I will speak to you, and you will speak to him. We will make this deal. Together." The deal was signed 3 days later. It was a better deal than Thorne had ever imagined. The sheikh, impressed by Elena's integrity and Thorne's wisdom in trusting her, had conceded on almost every major point. The $2 billion project was secure. The flight back to Chicago was quiet. Mr. Cole slept, exhausted. Elena was staring out the window, watching the curve of the earth. Thorne was sitting across from her, a glass of untouched whiskey on the table. He hadn't said much since the meeting. As they began their descent over Lake Michigan, he finally spoke. "How did you know?" he asked. "About the kickback. How did you know to call his bluff with that academic paper?" Elena turned from the window. "I didn't," she said. "What?" "I lied. I've never read a paper by him. I don't even know if he's ever written one. I just knew that a man that arrogant, who was willing to cheat in a room that big, had to have an ego. I gambled that he saw himself as a brilliant strategist, so I quoted his brilliant work back to him. It was the only way to expose him without accusing him. I just needed him to believe that I was on his level, and that he'd been caught. Julian Thorne stared at her. He wasn't shocked. He was something else. He started to laugh. It was a low, genuine laugh, the first one she had ever heard from him. "You didn't just translate, Elena," he said, using her first name for the first time. "You ran a psychological operation. You took down a con man, saved a multi-billion-dollar deal, and negotiated a new one, all in a language you were supposedly too empty-headed to understand." He shook his head, looking down into his glass. "That $1 million bonus. It was the biggest bargain of my life." "Thank you, Mr. Thorne," she said. "Julian," he corrected her. "I think we're past Mr. Thorne." "Julian," she agreed. They landed. A car was waiting. It dropped Elena at her new corporate apartment. "I've cleared your schedule for a week, Elena," Julian said as she got out. "Go. Buy a house, a car, whatever you want. Then come see me in my office." Elena did just that. The first thing she did was log into her student loan account. She typed in the payoff amount, 103 or 150 OTSTHs. She hit submit. The screen read, "Congratulations, your loan is paid in full." She sat on the floor of the empty, luxurious apartment and wept, but this time the tears were different. A week later, she walked into Julian Thorne's office. She was wearing one of her new custom suits. She was no longer a waitress, no longer in debt. She was a free woman. "Elena," Julian said, standing to greet her. "Congratulations." "Thank you, Julian, for the opportunity." "Don't thank me," he said. "I should be thanking you, which is why I have a new proposal." He gestured for her to sit. "The bonus and the project fee, that's all yours. It's in your account. We're square." "It's more than square," she said. "You've changed my life." "Good," he said. "Now I'm going to change it again. That deal in Riyadh, it's just the start. The Sheikh wants us to be his primary partner for all his US and European ventures. He's opening a door, but I don't have anyone who knows how to walk through it." He leaned forward. "I don't need a part-time translator, Elena. I need a new division. I'm opening a new branch of Thorne Global, Middle East operations and cultural strategy, and I want you to run it." Elena's breath caught. "Run it? As in, be an employee?" "No," Julian said. "I don't want you as an employee. I saw you in that room. You're not an employee, you're a shark, and I'd rather have you in my tank than in the open ocean." He slid a document across the table. It was a partnership agreement. "I'm offering you a full partnership in the new division. A stake, a percentage of every deal you broker. You won't be working for me, Elena. You'll be working with me." Elena looked at the document, then at his face. "Why? You could hire anyone." "But I don't want anyone," Julian said, his voice quiet and serious. "I want you, because you're smarter than me. Not in business, not yet, but in people and in language. And you're not afraid of me. You're the only person in this company, aside from maybe Mr. Cole, who has ever told me I was wrong, who has ever called me on my arrogance." He stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. "There's another reason," he said, his back to her. "My mother. She was a linguist. She spoke 4 languages. She translated poetry. She was brilliant. And my father, he called it her hobby. He said it was soft. He dismissed her entire life. He treated her brilliance like it was an amusing party trick." He turned to face her. When I was in that restaurant, when I insulted you, I was being my father. I was being the exact kind of ignorant, arrogant man I swore I would never become. You reminded me of her, and you did something she never got the chance to do. You fought back, and you won." He took a deep breath. This isn't just a job offer, Elena. It's an apology, and it's a chance for me to finally, in some small way, honor the brilliance I saw dismissed my whole life. Don't work for me. Be my partner. Help me build something that lasts. Elena Sanchez, the waitress who was once fired for a single drop of water, looked at the billionaire who had insulted her. He was not just offering her a job or money, he was offering her respect. She stood up and extended her hand. "On one condition," she said. Julian smiled, knowing this was coming. "Name it." "We, the new division, will set up a scholarship fund at Georgetown's linguistics department. A full-ride scholarship in your mother's name, so that the next brilliant mind who masters a language doesn't have to choose between their passion and a lifetime of debt. So they never have to pour water for a man like you." Julian Thorne looked at her hand. He didn't hesitate. He grasped it firmly. "Done," he said. "Welcome to the company, partner." The story of Elena Sanchez reminds us that our true worth isn't determined by our job title or the uniform we wear. It's determined by our knowledge, our character, and our courage. Elena had a skill that the world had overlooked, but when the moment came, she was ready. She turned an insult into an opportunity, and an opportunity into an empire. She didn't just get revenge, she got respect. And she used her new power to lift others up with her. True power isn't about being the loudest person in the room, like Julian Thorne was. It's about being the person who understands what's really being said. What do you think about Elena's incredible comeback? Have you ever been in a situation where someone underestimated you? Let us know your story in the comments below. We read every single one. If this story inspired you, please show your support by hitting that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories of karma and triumph. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.